The great hall of the alien baron was filled with laughter and cruel smiles, the kind of sound that echoed like a hammer inside the heart of the weak. The torches burned brightly against the stone walls, and the crowd gathered to see the baron's new amusement. In the center of the hall stood a human man, tall, quiet, his face calm but his eyes sharp. Beside him, pushed forward roughly by guards, stood the baron's daughter. She was small, with pale skin that shimmered faintly under the firelight. Her hair, long and silver, fell over her face, hiding her eyes from the cruel crowd. She did not speak. She never spoke. For years she had been known as the mute daughter, the one who was cursed, useless, unworthy of her father's noble line. The baron, with a twisted grin, raised his hand for silence. "Look at her," he shouted, his voice booming across the hall. "My daughter, silent as stone, worthless as broken steel." His followers laughed with him, cruel and loud. What good is a daughter who cannot even speak? What good is a girl who cannot even obey with words? He turned toward the human, pointing his long clawed finger. "You, human, you may have her," the baron declared mockingly. "Take her as your gift. Take her as your burden. Let the galaxy laugh at you as I do now. You will learn what it means to hold nothing in your hands." The hall roared with laughter again. The alien nobles clapped. Some shouted insults. Others whispered that the baron was clever. He had found a way to humiliate the human. For in their eyes, humans were already weak outsiders, and now this human was being given a curse as a bride. The girl kept her head bowed, her hands shaking. She did not look at the human. She expected to be rejected, to be mocked further, perhaps even struck down. For that was how life had always treated her. Every step she took was filled with silence and shame. But the human did not laugh. He did not sneer. He stepped closer, his boots echoing against the stone. The hall grew quieter, curious to see what he would do. He looked at the girl with steady eyes, his voice calm and firm. "I will take her," he said. His words cut through the noise like a blade through cloth. Simple words, spoken without hesitation, but with a weight that silenced even the cruelest laughter for a moment. The baron blinked, then barked out another laugh. "Then she is yours," the baron mocked. "Take this silent doll, this broken thing. She will bring you no joy, no honor, and no children of value. But take her, human, and let her curse be your curse." The guards shoved the girl toward him. She stumbled, nearly falling, but the human caught her arm gently. He steadied her, his grip strong but not cruel. The girl gasped softly, though no words came out. She had never been touched with kindness before. The crowd burst into more laughter. They shouted things, like, "Look at the human with his doll," and "Soon he will beg to return her." The baron leaned back in his great chair, drinking his wine, satisfied with his mockery. The human, however, said nothing more. He simply led the girl out of the hall, his head held high. The torches flickered behind him as the doors closed, sealing in the echo of cruel laughter. Outside, under the pale light of twin moons, the girl finally dared to lift her eyes. She looked at the human who now held her fate. She expected disgust in his face, or coldness, but instead she found something different. His gaze was steady, his jaw tight. His silence was not cruel, it was strong. He looked down at her, noticing her trembling hands. He did not mock her, he did not pity her. Instead, he simply nodded once as though to say, "You are safe with me." The girl's heart beat faster. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but as always, her voice failed. No sound came out. She lowered her head again, tears filling her eyes. The human did not push her. He did not demand her voice. Instead, he simply walked with her into the night. Each step away from the baron's hall felt like a step away from the cage she had lived in all her life. But deep inside, her chest, something stirred for the first time, a spark, a whisper of hope. The mocking gift her father had given away so easily might not be a curse after all. And though no one knew it yet, this was only the beginning. The beginning of something the baron never imagined possible, because the mute daughter, the girl with no voice, would soon do the impossible. She would speak. The small home of the human stood at the edge of the alien village, far from the baron's grand halls of stone and fire. It was not large or richly built, just wood, metal scraps, and a simple roof, but it was warm and safe. For the mute daughter, this place felt like a strange new world, one she did not yet trust. The night they arrived, the girl hesitated at the doorway. Her bare feet touched the cold ground, and she thought for a moment that he would shut the door in her face, like so many had done before. But the human did not push her away. Instead, he stepped aside and said, "Come in." His voice was calm, without mockery, without command. Inside, the fire burned gently in the hearth, casting soft orange light on the walls. The human moved about the small space, placing food on the table, simple bread and a steaming bowl of stew. The girl stood still, frozen. She thought maybe it was a trick. Maybe he wanted to test her. Maybe the food was not for her, but then the human pulled out a chair and nodded toward it. "Sit," he said quietly. She obeyed, lowering herself onto the chair. Her hands shook as she reached for the spoon. The steam warmed her face. She brought it to her lips and tasted food unlike anything she had eaten in years. It was not bitter or spoiled. It was warm, gentle, and real. Tears stung her eyes. The human noticed, but he said nothing. He simply ate his own food, giving her silence that did not feel cruel. For the first time in her life, silence did not hurt. It felt safe. When the meal was finished, she tried to clean the bowls, but her clumsy hands fumbled. A bowl slipped. She gasped silently, expecting him to strike her. Her father's men always struck her for mistakes, but the human only caught the bowl. Before it hit the floor, he set it back gently and shook his head. "It's all right," he said. Her chest tightened. She did not understand. Why did this man treat her like this? Why no anger? Why no laughter at her weakness? That night he gave her a blanket and pointed to a small bed in the corner. She shook her head, wanting to refuse. She thought maybe he should take it instead, but he insisted. "It's yours," he said, then turned away, taking only the wooden chair for himself. He slept sitting upright near the fire, while she lay in the soft bed, staring at him through the dim light. Her heart raced, her mind confused. For the first time, someone had given her warmth without demand. The days that followed were strange. The village whispered about them, the human with the mute girl. The children mocked outside the door, shouting cruel words. Some of the Baron's men passed by, laughing loudly. "How long before you throw her away, human?" They taunted, but the man never answered them. He carried on with his work, tending to the land, fixing tools, chopping wood, and always, he let her stay close, never forcing her to leave. The girl tried to help, though she often failed. She carried water but spilled half of it. She chopped wood, but the axe was too heavy. She swept the floor but left dust behind. Each time she braced herself for anger, but the human only shook his head. "Try again," he would say, never raising his voice, never lifting his hand. Slowly, the girl began to change. Her steps grew steadier. Her hands stopped trembling as much. She still could not speak, but she started to hum softly when she worked. Just small sounds that surprised even herself. Sounds she thought were long buried. One evening, as the fire crackled, the human placed a cup of water before her and looked at her directly. "You are not broken," he said. His voice was firm, his eyes sharp. She froze, staring at him. Her hands tightened on the cup. Tears welled up. She shook her head, her lips parting as though to deny it, but no words came. "You are not broken," he repeated, as though he could plant the truth in her heart by force of will. She lowered her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her chest ached. She wanted to say something, anything, but her throat locked. No sound escaped. That night she dreamed of her father's hall, of his cruel laughter, of the words he had shouted, worthless, broken, cursed. She woke trembling, her hands clutching the blanket. But then she saw the human awake by the fire, sharpening his blade. He glanced at her, not unkindly, just steady and calm. She felt her fear ease. In the days that followed, she tried harder. She cooked clumsily. She cleaned. She fetched wood. And though she still failed often, she began to notice the human's small smiles when she succeeded even a little. Once she managed to carry 2 full buckets of water without spilling, and he nodded. "Good," he said. Just one word, but it made her heart race. She realized something terrifying. She wanted him to be proud of her. She wanted him to look at her not as a burden, but as someone who mattered. The Baron's spies returned to the hall with reports. They told him the human was caring for the girl, not throwing her out, not mocking her. The Baron laughed, pounding his fist on the table. "Fool! He will tire of her soon," he said. "No man can bear the weight of silence forever." But he was wrong, because each day, the silence between the human and the girl was not empty. It was slowly filling with trust. And somewhere deep inside, her beneath years of shame and fear, something small was breaking free. A voice buried in chains began to stir, faint and fragile, but real. The mute daughter who had never spoken was beginning to feel the first spark of change. A promise hidden in the human's kindness was awakening something she had thought impossible. The Baron's laughter still echoed in his hall, days after he had mocked the human. He thought his cruel gift was the end of the story, but whispers in the village began to reach him. Whispers that the human had not cast the mute daughter away. Whispers that the girl who had lived like a shadow now walked the dirt path outside, his home, carrying water, tending fire, even smiling faintly when she thought no one saw. The Baron leaned back in his great stone chair, his claws drumming on the armrest. His eyes glowed with sharp curiosity. He did not like surprises, and this human was fast becoming one. So he sent his men, shadows of his cruelty, to watch, to wait, to bring him news. The spies came often, moving like snakes through the village. They laughed at the human's home, mocked the sight of the girl struggling with tasks too heavy for her. "She will never be more than broken," one of them sneered. But though they mocked, they always returned with one detail that unsettled. The Baron, the human, did not strike her, did not cast her out, did not shout at her failures. Instead, he stayed, always quiet, always firm, protecting her like something of value. The Baron snarled when he heard, "Value? That girl has none," he growled. "She is my shame, and now she should be his shame. Yet why does he not throw her away?" While the Baron boiled in anger, the girl's life began to take on a new rhythm. The human worked long hours, chopping wood, fixing tools, hunting in the forest. The girl followed him, learning quietly. Sometimes she stumbled, sometimes she dropped what she carried, but the human never abandoned her. His silence was steady like the roots of a great tree. At night, when the fire crackled, she often stared at him, studying the lines of his face. He was not like the aliens of her kind. His skin was different, his build stronger in some ways, weaker in others, but his eyes carried no cruelty, only a quiet weight. And though her lips could form no words, her heart whispered many. Still, shadows lingered. She felt them, the eyes of the Baron's men hiding in the woods, watching, mocking. Once when she fetched water, a stone struck the ground near her feet. She froze, her breath shaking. Then she heard the voices, low laughter, cruel and sharp. "How long before the human grows tired of his toy?" they whispered. She clutched the bucket tightly and hurried back, but her hands trembled so much the water spilled. When she reached the home, the human noticed at once. He saw her pale face, the spilled water, the way her shoulders shook. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. He stepped outside, his hand resting on the blade at his side. His eyes swept the trees, and though the spies vanished before he could see them, he knew they were there. The girl watched from the doorway. Her heart thudded as she realized something. The human was not only sheltering her, he was willing to stand between her and her father's shadows. For the first time, she felt the weight of protection, not as chains but as a shield. That night, as the fire burned low, the girl sat with the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She held a small wooden cup, her hands trembling. She wanted to speak, to thank him, to warn him, to say anything, but her throat betrayed her. No sound came. She lowered her head in shame. The human, sharpening his blade, looked at her once. His voice was quiet, steady as always. "They will not touch you," he said. His words, so few yet so certain, made her chest ache. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She wanted to answer, but the silence inside her felt like a wall she could never break. The Baron's men returned to their master with reports. "He guards her," they said. "He treats her as though she matters." The Baron laughed, though the sound was more forced this time. "Let him guard a shadow. Let him waste his strength. In the end, silence is heavier than any chain. He will break." But even the Baron's laughter could not erase the truth. The girl was changing. Slowly, silently, something inside her was waking. She began to hum more often, small broken sounds when she worked, a tune without words, soft but alive. The human noticed but never interrupted. He let the sound grow, and sometimes, just sometimes, his lips curved into a faint smile. The girl saw it once and nearly dropped the wood she carried. Her heart leapt. Her voice, though still weak, had made him smile. One evening, as the sky turned red with sunset, she stumbled while carrying firewood. The logs spilled, rolling into the dirt. She fell to her knees, frustrated, tears burning in her eyes. She tried to gather them, but her hands shook. She hated herself for being weak, useless, broken. She pressed her lips together, and a sound escaped. A small cry, not a word, but a cry that broke the air. The human dropped what he was doing and rushed to her. He lifted the logs with ease and set them aside, then helped her up. His eyes met hers. He didn't laugh, didn't scold. He simply said, "You're stronger than you know." Her breath caught. Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to speak, to say thank you, but again no words came, only silence. She bit her lip, tears spilling. But somewhere inside her chest, beneath the years of fear and cruelty, her voice pushed against its chains. The shadows of the Baron would not silence her forever. The human's promise, his protection, his quiet strength, it was building a fire inside her. And though the Baron still laughed in his great hall, mocking from afar, he did not know the truth. He did not see the spark growing in the girl's heart, a spark that would soon burn into something no one in the galaxy believed possible. The mute daughter was not as silent as they thought. The night was heavy with silence, darker than usual. The forest outside the human's home groaned with wind, and the fire inside flickered low. The mute daughter sat by the window, staring at the sky. Her chest was tight. Her throat ached as if some invisible hand pressed down on it. She had lived her whole life like this, full of words that never came. The human sat near the fire, sharpening his blade again. The sound of steel against stone was steady, calm. It was the sound she had grown used to, the sound that meant safety. But tonight, something in the air felt different. Shadows moved outside, too many, too close. Suddenly, the door rattled. A loud thud shook the frame. The girl jumped, her eyes wide with fear. The human was already on his feet, blade in hand, his jaw tightened, his stance steady. The door burst open and 3 figures stormed in, bandits, rough and armed with jagged blades. They were not the Baron's nobles, but greedy men who had heard whispers that the human sheltered a noble's daughter. They thought she might be worth stealing. "Well, well," one of them sneered, his teeth yellow in the firelight. "The human keeps treasures after all. Look at her, silent, but she'll fetch a price. Step aside, human, and we'll make this quick." The human did not move. His eyes burned, his grip firm on his weapon. "You will not touch her." "We may," said, his voice low, steady, like stone. The girl's heart raced. She pressed back against the wall, her hands shaking. She wanted to scream, to warn him of the man creeping behind him, but her voice locked, her lips parted, but nothing came. Just air, useless and weak. One of the bandits lunged. The human met him with steel. Their blades clashed. Sparks flew. The room filled with the roar of struggle. The girl's body shook. As fear wrapped around her, her mind screamed, "Say something. Warn him." But her throat burned with silence. The second bandit reached for her arm. His grip was rough, cruel. She tried to pull back, but she was weak. He yanked her forward, snarling, "Quiet little doll, come with us." And then it happened. Her chest convulsed, her throat burst with fire, and for the first time in her life a word ripped through the silence. "No!" The sound was broken, cracked, but it was real. The bandit froze, his eyes wide in shock. The human spun around, his own eyes widening as he heard her voice. For just an instant, the battle itself seemed to stop. The human surged forward, his blade striking with furious strength. He cut the bandit down before he could drag her away. The others cursed, fighting harder. But the human moved with deadly precision. His strikes were not wild, they were controlled, fueled by the spark he had just heard. The girl stood frozen, her lips trembling. She had spoken. She had actually spoken. Her heart thundered in her chest. Her hands flew to her mouth as though she couldn't believe the sound had been her own. Within moments, the last bandit staggered out the door, wounded, fleeing into the night. The human chased him no further. He shut the door, bolted it, then turned toward her, his blade still in hand, his breathing heavy, but his eyes were not on the bandits, they were on her. "You spoke," he said quietly. His voice was steady but softer than she had ever heard. The girl's knees gave out, and she sank to the floor, tears spilling down her face. She tried again, her lips moving, her throat trembled. A sound came, weak, broken. "No," she whispered again. Her voice cracked, but it was still a voice. The human knelt in front of her, placing the blade aside. He did not laugh. He did not mock. Instead, he rested a hand on her trembling shoulder. "You are stronger than they know," he said. Her tears flowed freely. She pressed her hands to her chest, trying to steady the storm inside her. For so long she had believed she was cursed, broken. But tonight, under the firelight, in the middle of danger, she had done the impossible. She had spoken. The human stayed beside her until her breathing calmed. He gave her water, steadying her hands when they shook. She tried to say more, but her throat gave only broken sounds. Still, he did not look disappointed. He only nodded, as though her single word was the start of something great. When at last she lay down to rest, she stared at the ceiling, her lips moving silently, practicing the word over and over in her mind. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her heart was alive. She had broken the silence. She had proved her father wrong, even if only with one word. Outside, far in the forest, the Baron's spies returned to their master. They told him what they had seen, the bandit's failure, and the girl's impossible act. The Baron roared with laughter, though his hands shook as he gripped his chair. "Impossible," he spat. "She has no voice, she never has." But deep in his heart, unease crawled. Back in the small home, the human sat awake by the fire, watching her sleep. His mind was heavy, not with fear but with determination. He had seen her strength, heard her voice, and he knew it was only the beginning. The girl's first word had been born from fear, but he believed her next would be born from courage, and when that happened, the galaxy itself would hear her. The next morning dawned with pale light spilling over the village roofs. The girl sat on the edge of the small bed, her hands clasped tightly together. Her mind replayed the night before, the clash of blades, the fire, the bandits, and her own broken cry. The word no still rang in her chest, trembling like a fragile bird that had escaped its cage. She touched her lips with trembling fingers. Her throat still ached from forcing the sound, but her heart was alive. Awake in a way it had never been. She had spoken. She could speak. The human came in from outside, carrying water in a wooden bucket. His expression was calm, his movement steady. But when his eyes met hers, there was something different there. A softness she had never seen before. He placed the bucket down and said, "You should drink." His tone was simple, but she felt the weight of his gaze as though he was silently telling her, "I heard you." She lifted the cup of water, her hands shaking. She wanted to say something, anything, even one more word, but her throat locked again. Fear wrapped around her chest. Fear of failure. Fear that last night had been only an accident. She lowered her head in shame. The human stepped closer. He crouched down, so their eyes met. "You did it once," he said quietly. "You can do it again." Her heart hammered. She opened her mouth, breath trembling. The sound cracked, weak. Her throat burned. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting against years of silence. Her lips formed the shape again. No. This time it was clearer, though still faint. The human's lips curved into the smallest smile. He nodded. Good. Her eyes widened, tears rising. She had spoken again, not in fear this time, but in effort. She covered her mouth, staring at him. Her body trembled as though she had just lifted a mountain. The days that followed were filled with attempts. She tried each morning and each night. Her throat ached, her lips fumbled, but with every try, more sounds escaped. Sometimes only air, sometimes broken syllables. But each attempt was met with the human's patience. He never laughed, never mocked. He waited, listened, encouraged with a nod or a steady hand. At first she repeated the same word, no, over and over, until the sound grew sharper, clearer. Then she tried other small ones. Yes, water, fire. The words broke like stones, cracking, rough and uneven, but real. One evening, while the human was fixing a broken tool, she gathered her courage. Her heart thundered as she whispered, "Thank you." The words stumbled, broken between her lips, but they were there. She looked at him in terror, afraid he would not understand. But he froze, his hands stopping their work. His eyes lifted to her, steady and deep. "Say it again," he urged gently. She swallowed hard, tears brimming. "Thank you." This time the words were clearer, her voice weak but filled with a power she had never known. The human's expression shifted, not shock, not disbelief, but pride, a warmth so strong it made her chest ache. He placed the tool aside and rested a hand on her shoulder. "You're finding it," he said. For the first time in her life she smiled, a real smile, not one stolen in secret, but open and trembling with joy. But not everyone rejoiced. The Baron's men, lurking in the shadows, returned to their master with the news. "She speaks," they said, their voices uneasy. The Baron's laughter filled the hall, loud but hollow. "Nonsense," he scoffed. "A broken doll cannot mend itself. This is a trick, a lie spread by a desperate human." Yet in the pit of his stomach, a seed of fear began to grow. Back in the village, whispers spread, some mocked, refusing to believe. Others grew curious. Some even gathered near the human's home, hoping to hear it for themselves. The girl felt their eyes on her, their cruel expectations. Her chest tightened, her throat froze. Whenever she tried before strangers one day, as the crowd lingered outside, she faltered, unable to speak. The whispers turned to laughter. "See? Still mute, still worthless," they sneered. The girl's eyes filled with tears, her body shaking with shame. But the human stepped forward, his voice firm. "She is not broken," he said. His tone silenced the crowd for a moment. His presence was steady, immovable. Inside, the girl sat trembling, anger and pain twisting inside her. For so long she had been a shadow, mocked and ignored. But now she had tasted her own voice, she could not let it die again. That night, she sat before the fire, her hands clenched tight. The human beside her, sharpening his blade as always. She closed her eyes, focusing, breathing. Then she tried again, her lips moving. The sound was faint but real. She forced it again. "I am..." Her throat cracked, but the words formed. "I am not broken." The human's hands stilled. He looked at her, his expression unreadable at first. Then slowly he set the blade down. His eyes softened, and for the first time since she had met him, his face broke into a true, full smile. Tears fell freely. She had spoken a sentence. Her voice was not strong, not yet, but it was hers. For years she had been silent, But now, with the human's promise and his unwavering belief, the impossible had happened. She had a voice, and with it, she would never again be just the Baron's shame. The Baron's great hall was filled again with torchlight, smoke curling toward the high ceiling. His laughter rolled across the stone, like thunder, sharp and cruel. Word had reached him that his mute daughter had done the unthinkable. The spies whispered she had spoken, that the human had somehow awakened her silence. The Baron's clawed fingers tightened around his goblet, his pride burning hotter than the wine inside. She will never speak, he snarled to his court, though doubt flickered in his eyes. I will show them all. I will drag her here before the nobles, before the crowd, and she will fail. Then this lie will be crushed forever. Messengers were sent. Guards marched to the human's home, banging on the door with their iron fists. The Baron demands your presence, they growled. The girl froze, her heart hammering. Fear clawed at her throat. Her voice was still, weak, fragile. What if it failed her before them all? What if she disappointed him? The only one who had ever believed in her. The human stood beside her, his jaw hard. His eyes narrowed at the guards, but he did not resist. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder and whispered, "You are not broken." His words, calm and certain, pressed into her heart like iron. They were led to the hall where a sea of faces waited, nobles sneering, villagers murmuring, all eager to see the mockery. The Baron sat high on his throne, his grin wide. "Ah," he boomed, his voice heavy with cruel amusement. "The human and his doll return. Let us end this nonsense." The girl kept her eyes low, her hands trembling. The firelight made the hall swim before her eyes. The memory of years of mockery pressed against her chest. The voices of the past whispered in her head. Worthless, cursed, broken. Her lips quivered, but no sound came. The Baron rose, spreading his arms. "My nobles, my warriors, behold this foolish rumor. They say my silent daughter has found her voice. Ha! Lies. Watch, and see her fail once more." He turned to her, his eyes sharp as blades. "Speak," he commanded. "Speak, girl, if you can." The hall went silent. Every eye pressed against her. The weight of their expectations was crushing. She opened her mouth, but fear locked her throat. Her chest burned, no sound came. The crowd laughed, cruel and loud. Still broken, they jeered, still worthless. Tears stung her eyes. Her knees shook. She wanted to run, to hide. Her father's mocking grin cut through her heart, but then she felt it. A hand, warm and steady, the human's hand, resting lightly against her back. He did not push her. He did not demand. He only stood beside her, his strength flowing into her like a shield. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. His words echoed in her mind. "You are not broken." Her lips trembled, her throat tightened, and then, sound weak but real, "I..." The crowd gasped, laughter faltering. She forced it again, stronger. "I am..." Her body shook with effort. Her father's eyes widened. "I am... not... broken." The hall froze. The words echoed against the stone. Fragile yet powerful. For the first time in her life, she had spoken her truth before them all. Silence spread, followed by shocked murmurs. The Baron's face twisted in disbelief. His goblet slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. "Impossible," he hissed, his voice cracked with rage. "You dare make a mockery of me?" But the girl lifted her head. Her eyes, once always lowered, now shone with fire. She turned to her father, her lips trembling but her voice steady. "You are wrong," she said. The words were broken, uneven, but every sound struck like a blade. The crowd erupted. Some gasped in awe, some cheered, others whispered furiously. The nobles who had laughed now stared wide-eyed, unable to deny what they had seen. The Baron stumbled back a step, his pride torn before all. His humiliation was complete. The human stepped forward, placing himself beside the girl. His presence steady, his head held high. His silence was louder than the Baron's shouts. It said what no words needed to. He had done what the Baron never Could the Baron's rage exploded. "This is a trick," he roared. "Some sorcery, some deception." He pointed at the human, his voice breaking into madness. You corrupted her, you—" But the girl interrupted, her voice trembling but strong enough to carry. "I am not yours to shame," she said. Each word was like a strike. Her tears glistened, but they were no longer of weakness. They were of victory. The hall erupted again, this time not in laughter but in shouts. Some cried out in support, others demanded answers. The nobles turned to one another in confusion. The Baron's mockery had backfired. His cruelty had given birth to the very thing he feared most. Her voice, the Baron sank back into his throne, his hands trembling. His eyes burned with fury, but his humiliation was plain. For the first time, he had been defeated not by steel, not by force, but by the voice of the daughter he had mocked for a lifetime. The human placed his arm lightly around her shoulders, guiding her back toward the hall's doors. The crowd parted before them, no longer laughing, no longer mocking, but silent in awe. As they left the hall, the girl turned once more, her lips shaping one final word toward her father. Enough. It was clear, sharp, undeniable, and with it, the Baron's cruelty shattered. The mute daughter had spoken, and the Baron's pride lay in ruins. The hall's doors slammed shut. Behind them, muting the storm of shouts and gasps within, the Baron's fury still echoed faintly, but outside under the night sky the air felt different, lighter, free. The girl staggered a little as they walked, her body trembling with exhaustion. Her throat burned from the words she had forced out. Yet her chest felt strangely alive. She had spoken, not just one word, not in secret, but before all, the human steadied her with a hand at her back, guiding her through the village paths. His silence was not heavy. It was steady, protective. She glanced at him, tears still glistening in her eyes. She wanted to thank him, to tell him everything that had lived unspoken in her heart for so many years. Her lips parted, but her voice failed again. Only a small broken sound escaped. She lowered her head in shame, but the human did not look disappointed. Instead, he said softly, "You were brave." His words were simple, but to her they felt heavier than any crown. For years she had been told she was worthless, cursed, broken. Tonight, with him beside her, she had stood tall and shattered that lie. The village was no longer the same. People who once mocked her now stared as she passed. Some whispered in awe, others bowed their heads with shame, for they had laughed at her silence and now they had heard her voice. Mothers pulled their children closer, saying, "Do not mock what you don't understand." Even the Baron's spies slunk away into the shadows, too shaken to face the human's steady eyes. Back inside the small home, the girl sat by the fire, her body still weak but her spirit burning. The human poured water for her, pressing the cup into her hands. She sipped carefully, her throat aching with each swallow. Yet she longed to try again, to use her voice not out of fear, not to defy her father, but to speak her heart. She looked at the human, her hands clutching the cup. Her lips moved, her chest tightening. "Thank you," she whispered. The sound was broken, fragile, but the meaning was clear. Her eyes filled with tears. The human paused, then nodded slowly. His gaze softened, warmer than firelight. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "The strength was always yours." Her heart pounded. She shook her head, her lips forming the words again, forcing them past the chains that still clung to her throat. "I would not without you." Each word came slowly, painfully, but each one was real. Her tears spilled as she pressed her hands against her chest, as if to hold in the storm of emotions. The human leaned forward, steadying her trembling shoulders. His voice was quiet, yet strong. "Your voice belongs to you. Not to your father, not to me, it is yours." For a long time she stared at him, her breath trembling. No one had ever told her that before. No one had given her freedom. They had either mocked her or pitied her. But this human, he gave her something else entirely. He gave her dignity. Her lips moved again. She wanted to say more, not just words of thanks, but the truth of her heart. For days she had felt it building, growing like fire within her chest. And now, though her voice shook, though her throat ached, she pushed the words into the world. I trust you? The human's eyes widened slightly. He said nothing for a long moment, but in his silence was something deep, something unspoken, yet stronger than any sound. From that night forward, her voice began to return piece by piece. She practiced by the fire, whispered words when fetching water, tried sentences as they walked. Sometimes she failed. Sometimes she broke down in tears, but he never turned away. He always waited, always encouraged. The village changed too. Children no longer mocked. Instead, they lingered at the edges of the path, listening when she tried to speak. Some even clapped softly when she managed a sentence. Her once silent presence became a spark of hope for others who had been forgotten or shamed. But in the Baron's hall, rage grew like wildfire. His pride was shattered. His nobles whispered behind his back. His broken daughter has spoken, they said. The human gave her what he never could. The Baron's humiliation was complete. Yet he dared not move against them again, for even he could not silence what the whole village had heard with their own ears. One evening, as the moons rose high, the girl sat beside the fire. She turned to the human, her lips trembling but her voice clearer than ever before. You gave me more than voice, she said. Her words cracked but carried a truth that shook even her. The human tilted his head. What did I give you? He asked quietly. Her throat burned with the effort, but she forced the words through, each one heavy and alive. You gave me life. Her tears fell, but she was smiling. For the first time, her voice was not just sound. It was love. The human's eyes softened, and though he spoke no reply, the way he looked at her said everything. His silence had never been empty. It was full, steady, strong, and now her voice filled the spaces between them. The mute daughter, once mocked as worthless, now spoke with a heart stronger than steel, and the human who had been mocked for accepting her had given her more than anyone imagined. Her freedom, her dignity, her voice, and together, their bond, became something the Baron's cruelty could never destroy. The voice of love had been born, and it would echo far beyond the walls of the Baron's hall.